New questions and concerns about Brett Kavanaugh's nomination to the Supreme Court. That after an accuser identifies herself and details allegations of serious sexual misconduct. Also, Election Day getting closer, and so are a lot of the contests that Republicans need to keep control of the Senate. We'll take a look at the Democrats' chances to take that chamber of Congress as well as the House of Representatives. Then Florence causing record rainfall and terrible flooding down south, but we'll show you how that powerful storm could impact people in our viewing area as well. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Now, we're going to like to also welcome our viewers in the Boston area who are watching us on WWDP. Welcome aboard. We start tonight with the latest on the Kavanaugh controversy and a lot of developments late today. Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh, he visited the White House today, and he's continuing to deny abuse allegations. The White House, they're standing by him 100%. Moments ago, President Trump saying it's, quote, ridiculous for him to even consider withdrawing the nomination. Trump also saying he's open to a delay in the confirmation vote so this can be sorted out. Now, Democrats, they want just that, so they can continue to take a closer look into the matter. Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley says the accuser deserves to be heard, and there is talk of having her testify before his panel. That committee was set to vote on Kavanaugh this Thursday, but that appears to be in jeopardy. And now a lot of Republicans are weighing in. Senator Flake, he's on the judiciary, and he says he's, quote, uncomfortable voting to advance the nomination until he knows more. Bob Corker, another retiring Republican, he's not on the committee, but of course, he's got to vote when it goes to the full Senate. He's also calling for a delay and a hearing to help the accusers at least get their side of the story out. Both Flake and Corker, they have been critics of the president, and seeing as both will be leaving at the end of the year, they don't exactly have a lot to lose, and they are two crucial votes. Now, Senators Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski are two Republicans who are staying in the Senate, and they are considered the two swing votes, as Roe v. Wade is a litmus test for them. They're on record as saying that. Kavanaugh, he didn't clearly state his position on that issue during the hearings. Take a listen.
If there are more questions that need to be asked and answered, then I think it would be appropriate to allow for that time.
I don't know enough about Dr. Ford and her allegations yet to reach that kind of judgment. That's why having the opportunity to observe her being questioned, read a transcript or and a deposition and make that kind of assessment is so important. Obviously, if Judge Kavanaugh has lied about what happened, that would be disqualifying.
All right. Now, remember, you have a razor-thin majority in the Senate for Republicans, so every vote matters here. Now, take a listen to arguably the most influential senator in this process, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell chiming in.
It is an accusation which the ranking member of the Committee of Jurisdiction has known about for at least 6 weeks. Known about for 6 weeks, yet chose to keep secret until the 11th hour. Neither she nor any of her Democratic colleagues chose to raise this allegation during the committee staff's bipartisan background calls with the nominee. They did not raise it, even with the name redacted in the 65 meetings Judge Kavanaugh held with senators before his confirmation hearing.
So there's Senator McConnell. He's representing Senator Feinstein. Andrew will get into more of the backstory about the California Democratic senator who was alerted by the woman in question, but also wanted her confidence protected. Now, with all that, I want you to listen to Senator Orrin Hatch. He's a Republican of Utah. He is on the Judiciary Committee, and he supports Kavanaugh. Now, he said this about the abuse allegations. This gives you a window as to where at least some of the Republicans are on this issue. He said, if that, meaning the sexual assault, were true, I think it would be hard for senators not to consider who he, Kavanaugh, is today. So even if the assault were true, he still would have to consider that, hey, a lot of time passed and he's a good guy now. Now, when we signed off on Friday night, this is what we knew. There was a letter from an unnamed accuser saying that Kavanaugh tried to force himself on her when he was 17 years old back in high school. Then it looked unlikely that anything would derail his nomination. But since Friday and today, a lot has changed. Here is our senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman, with more.
It's hard to describe, Rich, just how much has changed in the Kavanaugh nomination, not just since Friday, but really, if you think about it, since Thursday morning. Since the Kavanaugh hearings at that point had been over for nearly a week, and except for complaints about document production, some lingering questions on some Kavanaugh positions, there were few questions that Kavanaugh would eventually be confirmed. Even Reuters described Kavanaugh immediately after the hearings as being on track for his confirmation. Then Thursday came word that California Senator and top Democrat on Judiciary, Dianne Feinstein, was referring a letter to federal investigators about Kavanaugh. She would not say what the referral was about, but reports surfaced it was over possible sexual misconduct between Kavanaugh and a woman from when both were in high school. We also learned that Feinstein had first received that letter in July. Then on Friday, Ronan Farrow and Jane Mayer get the details of the allegation in The New Yorker, everything but the accuser's name. Her claims that at a high school party, Kavanaugh held her down and tried to force himself on her. That Kavanaugh and a friend turned up the music in the room so no one would hear her protests. And that Kavanaugh covered her mouth with his hand at the time. The accuser also saying she was worried that Kavanaugh might inadvertently kill her as he held her down. She's also detailed how that incident traumatized her for decades and impacted her relationships with men going forward. The piece also revealed why Feinstein kept the letter to herself for so long, that she didn't want the confirmation hearing to be about Kavanaugh's private life, just the law and Kavanaugh's career. Feinstein apparently did not share that information with other Democrats on the committee. Then Sunday, Christine Blasey Ford, a 51-year-old research psychologist and professor at Palo Alto University, came forward and told the Washington Post the Kavanaugh claims came from her. Ford also reported she first reached out to the Post in July once Kavanaugh was on the short list for the Supreme Court, but before he was nominated. She also wanted her story kept confidential and continued to decline to go on the record as the paper put it out. She grappled with concerns about what going public would mean for her and her family, and what she said was her duty as a citizen to tell her story. She also claims to have passed a polygraph, and only after she finally came forward, she said only after it became clear that her identity would be revealed anyway. She also came forward out of a sense of civic responsibility. This morning, fresh denials from Kavanaugh himself, as Ford's lawyer says that she is willing to testify and tell her story. The attorney also raising some pointed questions about a man named Mark Judge. He is a high school friend of Kavanaugh's who Ford says was the other man in the room when she was attacked, something Judge denies. But Judge, who's now a writer and a filmmaker, wrote a book about his time in high school. It's called Wasted, Tales of a Gen X Drunk. In it, Judge describes drunken parties, high school parties I should point out, filled with pliable women. Most of the time, he writes, everyone, including the girls, was drunk. If you could breathe and walk at the same time, you could hook up, he wrote. The drinking became so extreme that he had blackout episodes and woke up on the floor of a restaurant bathroom with no memory of how he got there. Once I had the first beer, he wrote, I found it impossible to stop until I was completely annihilated. And now Ford's attorney wants to know more.
Thus far, the nominee has refused to even acknowledge if he knows her or if he went to school with her. And we know there's a significant amount of writing that Mark Judge has done, which he's now pulled down from the internet, where he acknowledged that this was the culture at Georgetown Prep, that they drank excessively, that they engaged in really inappropriate behavior, and Brett Kavanaugh was part of that group. So there's a lot that the FBI can be looking at in addition to taking a statement from my client.
As Rich mentioned earlier, there are 100 people who have the final say on Kavanaugh's nomination. They are the members of the U.S. Senate. And a couple of hours ago, I caught up with one of those 100, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, Democrat from New York, for her thoughts on the revelations.
Senator, your reaction as a senator, as a woman, as a mother, when you read the specific allegations about Judge Kavanaugh, what should the Senate do now?
Well, the allegations obviously are credible and deeply troubling. And so I think the Senate should not rush into a vote this week. They should have a proper hearing, get to the bottom of it. But I think these allegations should give every senator pause before they vote to confirm this nominee to a lifetime appointment.
And for Republicans who are still insisting on voting Thursday?
I think it shows that they are not valuing women, and I think it's important that these allegations be thoroughly reviewed, and I think it's important that the survivor be heard.
Rich?
There certainly seems to be competing timelines, or at least interest in timelines. You heard from both Grassley and McConnell. They want to fast track this thing, keep it on for Thursday. But some of their own members, both on the judiciary and then Republicans in the Senate, they're like, slow your roll here. We need to know more. They don't want to be voting on someone when there could be another shoe to drop. Is the expectation that both the woman in question and Kavanaugh will testify before both of the committees before said vote? Senator
Kennedy from Louisiana just went on the record before we went on the air saying that he believes that there's going to be a hearing that he's going to be involved in, because I think he is on judiciary. So I think it's more likely than not at this point. Keep in mind, it's all about the optics at this point and how it looks. If Republicans rush this thing to a vote in committee or in the full Senate before people feel like every part of this has been explored or examined, a lot of people are going to feel like this thing has been rushed through and just done on a partisan basis. And the fact that there would be a president who is facing credible accounts of sexual abuse, appointing a justice to the Supreme Court who has facing credible accounts of sexual abuse, who would join another justice on the court who had faced credible allegations of sexual abuse.
Of course, Andrew's referencing Clarence Thomas.
Right, yep. And if you want to roll this all together, the speed with which Republicans are pushing towards the vote on Kavanaugh at this point is in stark contrast to how they approached Merrick Garland last year, when they absolutely wouldn't give him the time of day simply because they wanted the American people to have their say.
And to Andrew's point, we went more than a year with 8 justices on the Supreme Court with that vacancy obviously unfilled. All right, Andrew, stay with me. When we come back, we'll bring our panel in to take a close look at where this whole thing goes, the politics, the process, and also some of the questions. This was 35 years ago. How much should this weigh in terms of whether or not this person could get a lifetime appointment to the high court? It's he said, she said at the end of the day. Stay with us.